The Trump administration has released a new report calling for the injection of Christianity and religion in essentially all facets of American life, saying that Americans should remember religion as a, quote, essential support and always remember, quote, the creator who made us and bestows our right. This 224-page report recommended that the Justice Department issue guidance to promote an originalist understanding of how the Constitution sees the relationship between religion and government, essentially ending any notion of separation of church and state in American society. It calls for faith-based groups to no longer have to comply with civil rights laws, calls for public schools to be allowed to conduct religious displays, and only mentions the display of the Ten Commandments. And it called for the end of the Johnson Amendment, which bars nonprofits from making political endorsements in campaigns. This comes ahead of America's 250th anniversary in just 1 week. The administration is actively pushing to inject religion, but specifically Christian values, in all parts of American life, and you need to know about it. So spread the word.
That dovetails in with what you see here.
Separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. And from this day forward, that phrase should have no power over people of all faiths ever again in America.
The very notion of the separation of church and state is in the Constitution. First, I'm going to let the gentleman who created that last video explain to you about the term separation of church and state, and then I'm going to show you where that idea exists in the Constitution.
Boy, do they desperately want there to be no such thing as the separation of church and state. They devoted an entire presidential commission, the Religious Liberty Commission, to trying to say there's no such thing as the separation of church and state. That's Dan Patrick, the head of the commission, trying to do that. The problem is, it does exist. Yeah, the phrase comes from an 1802 letter that was written by Thomas Jefferson, but the Supreme Court first adopted the metaphor in 1878, then again in 1947, then in 1948, then in 1961 three times, then in 1962, in 1963, in 1968, in 1973, in 1977, in 1982, and on and on and on. And this is a thing that exists. The Treaty of Tripoli says the United States was not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. It was negotiated under George Washington, signed by President Adams with the unanimous consent of the U.S. Senate. Our Constitution was the first to declare that power comes from the people, not gods, we the people. It's a godless Constitution, the first of its kind. It's the first to ban religious tests for public office, and then after all that, you still get the First Amendment, which separates church and state and guarantees religious freedom. There is the separation of church and state in this country.
And let's take a look at that First Amendment to the Constitution. Look there at the bottom of your screen, Amendment 1. It's quite literally the first sentence in the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. The very first sentence in the very First Amendment. I'll read it again for you. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. And the disgustingly ironic part to all of this, with the Republicans trying to turn us into a Christian nation, what that gentleman, Dan Patrick's state of Texas, just did, making sure that all school children now have to read the Bible in school, that means that the Republican Party, ironically enough, is far closer to Sharia law than the Democrats have ever thought about being. They're the ones instituting Sharia law. It's just their version of Sharia law.